Good day, grade 7 learners. Hi, hello. I will be your teacher for today, and I am teacher Josel. Today is the day, your day, to learn and discover more about English. Welcome to our class. For this lesson, our discussion will focus on the most learning competency for the third quarter of week 3, and that is using the active and passive voice meaningfully in varied contexts. Always remember, learning never stops. Are you ready to learn? So, let's start! In this lesson, we have 4 objectives. 1 is to differentiate active voice from passive voice. 2. Identify whether the sentence is in the active or passive voice. 3. To transform active to passive voice and vice versa. And lastly, to construct sentences using the active and passive voice. It seems that they are difficult, right? But don't worry. What you need to do is to focus and to listen to understand the lesson. Learning all these things will be very rewarding and fulfilling. Background information. But before we continue our discussion, let us first define voice. So, what is voice? Voice is the relationship of the subject to the verb in a sentence. And there are 2 voices of the verb. These are the active voice and the passive voice. Let's serve first the active voice. When the subject does or acts upon the verb, the sentence is said to be in the active voice. The active voice follows this pattern: the subject or the doer of the action, plus the verb, plus the object or the receiver of the action. Let us look at this example. The Department of Health employs numerous nurses. We have here the subject, the Department of Health, which is the doer of the action. What is our action? The action or the verb here is employs. What about the object of the sentence? It is the numerous nurses. Another example. COVID-19 changed the lives of many Filipinos. Our subject here, COVID-19, is the doer of the action, and the verb is changed, while the object of the sentence is the lives of many Filipinos. For our last example, our province needs hardworking and dedicated politicians. Can you identify the subject, the verb, and the object of the sentence? Excellent! The subject of the sentence is our province because province performs the verb needs, and the object of the sentence is hardworking and dedicated politicians because hardworking and dedicated politicians receive the action. So you have noticed in the 3 examples that I have presented, we can see that the subject or the doer of the action is at the start of the sentence, followed by the verb and then the object. I hope you got it clear about the active voice. And now, let us have the passive voice. When the subject receives the action of the verb, the sentence is said to be in the passive voice. Let us look at this example. Numerous nurses are employed by the Department of Health. Now, our subject here is no longer the doer of the action, but it is already the receiver of the action. It is not the Department of Health that employs, but it is the numerous nurses who are employed. So the subject becomes now the receiver of the action, are employed. Let us look at the structure of the sentence that is in the passive voice. First, we have the subject that is the receiver of the action. Then, we have the auxiliary verb or the be verb. Next, we have the main verb that is in the past participle. And we also have the word by plus the agent or the receiver of the action. We must take note that by and agent or the doer of the actions are sometimes optional in the passive voice. Now, let us cite the sentence a while back. Numerous nurses is the subject, are is our be verb, and employed is our main verb, which is in its past participle. Numerous nurses are employed. So even if we remove the word by and the agent or the doer of the action, our sentence can stand by itself because it already states a complete thought. But we can also add the word by plus the agent or the doer of the action, which is the Department of Health. So our sentence would be, numerous nurses are employed by the Department of Health. I hope you got that. When are we going to use the passive voice? When the performer of the action is unknown or unimportant. For example, the hospital is built in 1700. We can say that the hospital is receiving the action. Therefore, this sentence is written in passive voice. The sentence has no object. Who built the bridge is not important in the sentence, or perhaps who built the bridge is unknown. When the performer of the action is obvious, here is an example. Cora was promoted last week. Cora, the subject of the sentence, is receiving the action. Who performed the action is not stated because it is obvious that it is her boss. Cora, receiver of the action, plus the be verb was, plus the past participle of the main verb, and that is promoted. So, our sentence is, Cora was promoted last week. We choose the passive voice if the result of the action is more important than who or what causes the action. An example, hundreds of people have had their homes destroyed by the typhoon. It is in the passive voice because it focuses on the result of the action destroyed. Passive voice can be used when we want to be more polite. As an example, we haven't been served. Passive voice is more polite than you haven't served us. Active voice. Now, for a clear understanding of the difference between the active and passive voice, let us look at the subject. Is the subject performing the action active or receiving the action passive? An example, the boy plays the guitar. Boy equals subject, plays equals verb. The boy is doing the action. Therefore, the boy is the active subject. Because the boy is the active subject, then the sentence is written in the active voice. The guitar is played by the girl. Guitar equals subject, is played equals verb. The guitar is receiving, not doing the action. Therefore, the guitar is the passive subject. Because the guitar is the passive subject, then the sentence is written in the passive voice. Did you get it? I hope that these examples gave you a clear understanding of the difference between the active and passive voice. Transforming active to passive voice or vice versa. Be reminded that in transforming active voice to passive voice or vice versa, take note of this. Tense of the verb. If the verb is in the active voice is in the present tense, passive voice should also be in the present tense and vice versa. However, the form of the verb as to S form or simple forms vary depending on the number of the subjects, whether they are singular or plural. In passive voice, the main verb is usually introduced by be verb. Do you have any idea what are those? Let me show it to you. These are the auxiliary verbs or the be verbs that you may use depending on the tense of the verb or the number of the subjects. Transforming active to passive voice. Then, let us try to transform the following sentences from active to passive voice. First one, Jolo reads a book. Jolo is our subject and the book is our object. I want you to note also that reads here is in the present tense. This sentence is in the active voice because Jolo, which is the subject, is the one reading a book. It is active in the sense that the subject is the doer of the action. Now, how do we transform active into passive voice? A book was read by Jolo. A book is a subject that is the object in the active voice. But if we're going to have it in the passive voice, it becomes the subject. And Jolo, which is the subject in the active voice, becomes the agent in the passive voice. We are using the word was read because reads in the active voice are in the present tense. Of course, we're going to use the past participle of the verb and to be connected by, so our passive sentence is, a book was read by Jolo. Let us have another example. Active voice. The Department of Health employs numerous nurses. And if we're going to transform that into passive voice, numerous nurses are employed by the Department of Health. So as you can see here, the Department of Health, that is our subject in the active voice, will become our agent or the doer of the action in the passive voice. And our verb employs will become our employed in the passive voice. Since we have to use a combination of a be verb plus the past participle of the main verb, now in here, the receiver of the action, which is the numerous nurses, will become the subject in the passive voice. And of course, we will add the word by that will introduce us to our agent or receiver of the action. Congratulations on doing a great job! This time, let's transform passive voice to active voice. These are some tips to help you rewrite passive voice to active voice. First, identify the verb. The thunder is heard by Joanne. Heard is the verb. Number 2, ask yourself who or what is doing the verb's action. Joanne is the one who hears, therefore, she is the one doing the verb's action. Let us have the third one. Rearrange the sentence order. Joanne heard the thunder. So, we're following the active voice pattern, subject, plus the verb, and lastly, the object. Let's have the fourth one. Remember, keep the verb tense the same. Another example, the pizza will be eaten by Mary. Will be eaten is the future tense. Mary will eat the pizza. Will eat is also in the future tense. Now, let me show you sentences in the active and passive voice in different tenses. Finally, our discussion on using the active and passive voice meaningfully in varied contexts is now completed. Do you have any concerns or questions? If you have, you can go back to the beginning of our transcript or you may ask your teacher, parent, or guardians for further guidance. But if you have completely understood our lesson, we can now start answering the activities. Let's go! To To check your understanding of the lesson, let's answer the 7 activities in your learning activity sheets. Also, always remember to carefully read the directions indicated in the following activities for you to be able to provide what is asked or needed. For our first activity, it will be found on page 3 of your learning activity sheets. Underline the verb, then on the space provided, write A if the sentence is in the active voice or P if it is in the passive voice. You will have 3 minutes to complete these activities. If you think you will not be able to finish it in the time allotted, you may always pause it and continue answering. The timer starts now. Let's have number 1. In the quarantine facility, the father recognized his son even from a distance. Correct. The verb is recognized and the sentence is in the active voice because the subject father is the one doing the action. For item number 2, the Department of Health Secretary's hollow voice was heard by the Filipino people. The verb is was heard and it is letter P or in the passive voice. What about number 3? Yes, the verb is were written and it is a passive voice. For item number 4, some signs of COVID-19 are observed in that person. Correct. Are observed is the verb and the sentence is in the passive voice. Let's proceed to item number 5. 40 sacks of rice have been stored in the quarantine facility. Had been stored as the verb while the sentence is in the passive voice. You're doing great! Moving on to item number 6. COVID-19 ruins the lives of many people. Yes, the subject is ruins and it is letter A or an active voice. For item number 7, Juantina was affected by the coronavirus disease. Right, was affected is the verb and it is in the passive voice. 8, it is in the active voice and the verb is conducting. For item number 9, the stillness of the night was shattered by a piercing scream. It is letter P and the verb is was shattered. And lastly, the relief goods will be delivered tomorrow. The verb is will be delivered and it is letter P or in the passive voice. Congratulations for a job well done. Let's proceed now to the next activity. It's now time to turn in your learning activity sheets on page 4. For activity B, fill in the blanks with the passive form of the verb in parentheses. I believe you are ready. You will be given 30 seconds to accomplish number 1 to 5 items. The timer starts now. Another 30 seconds will be given for items 6 to 10. If you think you will not be able to finish it in the allotted time, you may always pause it and continue answering. The timer starts now. Let us now check your activity B, fill in the blanks with the passive form of the verb. Due to lockdown, all public gatherings consisting of 10 or more blank prohibited by the government. Very good. The answer is were prohibited. Due to lockdown, all public gatherings consisting of 10 or more were prohibited by the government. We use the be verb were since public gatherings are in the plural form and past participle is prohibited since it is in the passive tense. Number 2. The answer is understood. For item number 3, will be distributed is the correct answer. 4. The correct answer is were given. For item number 5, was written is the answer. Moving on to number 6. Yes, were close is the right answer. 7. Nice going. The answer is were interviewed. How about item number 8? Amazing. The answer is was shocked. For number 9, great. It was tough. And lastly, the correct answer is will be implemented. Alright, check your answers. We are now in activity C. Turn your last on page 4. For activity C, you will change the following voice of verb from active to passive voice. Use a separate sheet of paper for your answers. I'll repeat. So in here, you're going to use a separate sheet of paper for your answers. You'll start with the first item and then try to explain why it is the correct answer. Then, you will be doing the succeeding items. Are you ready? Nice! Let's start! So the first sentence is, Secretary Francisco Duque visited the affected COVID-19 families. Nice job! The answer is, The affected COVID-19 families were visited by Secretary Francisco Duque. So in here, we are following the passive voice pattern, subject plus be verb plus main verb or the past participle form of the verb, plus, by, and lastly, the agent. You may now continue answering numbers 2 to 10. Moving forward to Activity D, pages 4 to 5 of your learning activity sheets. Change the following voice of the verb from passive to active voice. Use a separate sheet of paper for your answers. Again, in this activity, you will change the sentence from passive to active voice. The first sentence is, stock market losses are discussed by economists. Let's see if you get the right answer. You're amazing! Correct! The answer is, the economists discuss stock market losses. The agent or the receiver of the action economist now becomes the subject or the doer of the action discussed. Is everything clear now? Okay, you may now continue answering numbers 2 to 10. Turn your last on page 5. Let's have activity E. Answer the following questions using the passive voice. Choose your answer from the box. The number 1 is done for you. Write your answer on the spaces provided. Example, who received the Social Amelioration Program? Answer, Social Amelioration Program was received by the poorest of the poor. Since number 1 serves as an example, let us answer number 2. Who signed the Bayanihan to Heal Aswan Act? The choices are Spanish flu, President Rodrigo Duterte, DSWD, frontliners, police forces, and interagency task force. Great job! The answer is Bayanihan to Heal Aswan Act was signed by President Rodrigo Duterte. You may now continue answering numbers 2 to 10. I know you are excited to finish your activities. 2 more to go. Turn your last on page 6. Our second to the last activity is letter F. Use the given verbs in sentences. Follow indicated instructions for each number. Write your answer on the spaces provided. In this activity, you are going to give your own sentence following the indicated instructions for each number, meaning your answers may vary. Are you ready? Great! Let's start! Let's answer number 1. The verb is received. It must be written in the form of active voice and it must be in the present tense. Magnificent! The possible answer would be, Jose received a social amelioration form. You may continue answering numbers 2 to 7. For your final activity under letter G, turn your last on page 6. Practice writing sentences with active and passive voices of verbs. Construct at least 3 sentences interpreting the given diagram. Again, you will construct at least 3 sentences interpreting the given diagram using active or passive voice. Write your answer on the spaces in your learning activity sheets. The scoring rubric is provided for the criteria and evaluation of your output. Good luck and happy writing! After you've completed all the activities on your learning activity sheets, turn to page 7 and answer the reflection part. What is your most important learning from this topic? Write a short paragraph about it. Do not be scared to answer because this insightful question has no wrong answers. Okay? Congratulations for successfully finishing your lesson for this week. You were able to differentiate active voice from passive voice. You also learned to identify whether the sentence is in the active and passive voice. And of course, you were able to transform active to passive voice and vice versa. And lastly, construct sentences using the active and passive voice. Indeed, this has been a very productive discussion. continue doing well in the succeeding lessons. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.